Welcome, everybody, back to the Fire Talk podcast and live stream today. We're going to just kind of be going over your questions. There's not really much to talk about, unfortunately, but figuring we're going to go live for like 30 minutes, so a little bit shorter than we typically do on Sunday. But I think the first thing to kind of get into before you guys start throwing in your questions here is, what do you guys, or Isaac, I guess you can start. What do you feel about the 2022 season? How many games are you expecting at this point? I know we talked about it in the past, but maybe we can do some projections on that before we start going into Padres related stuff.
So I'm expecting about 130. I've seen things where the MLB doesn't want to push the delay past April 15th which is like, I forgot what anniversary for Jackie Robinson, but it's one of those anniversaries that they don't want to miss out on. So they don't want to get past April 15th, which means we would have around 140 to 150 games. That's what I would probably expect. I think that'd be great. I would still consider that a real season, considering you're not missing that many games. But I'm just excited to see how the Padres bounce back from their lackluster end of 2021. I want to see what team they actually are. Were they just a team that went on a cold streak, or are they actually bad? um, because from the end of July to September, or beginning of October when the season ended, I really I think I can count on my fingers how many games we won. It felt like, because it didn't feel like we were winning many games. So I just want to see, what Padres team are we going to get? The one from 2020 and the one to start 2021. Or are we going to get the back end of um of 2021 where the team just couldn't hit? They couldn't get together. It felt like there was bad chemistry, like something was happening. But um I honestly think it's going to be a good team again. I think we're going to have a successful season this year, especially with guys coming back. Hopefully health is on our side this year, and I'm just excited to see how the Padres do. Excited to see Fernando play again, Manny play again, Jake play again. Just excited to see our guys play again. Hopefully it doesn't go past April 15th.
Yeah, and for that April 15th date, it's Jackie Robinson's 75th anniversary of his debut. So that's like I guess it's like the target time. I don't think it's going to start then, unfortunately, which really sucks because that's such like a memorable thing for the MLB, and especially for Jackie Robinson and his family. So that one definitely, I don't know. I don't think we're going to see it, but I think we're looking at this, and we're looking at last season and seeing how can the Padres kind of finish out. I think Irie's right. Bob Melvin is not going to let the craziness happen, because to me, the reason why that season just got so derailed, one, the pitching at the end was abysmal. It was horrible. But Isaac, you also brought up, team was not generating runs. There was no offense and there was no pitching. And when that happens, you are going to struggle mightily. And in that last month, they were horrible. But we look at this and we go, it looked like a team that was just kind of was checked out. Didn't believe in the manager. And you started hearing reports about that. Like, yeah, no one respects Tingler. Like, it's kind of done. And I think that was definitely like evident when you would watch the game, when you just see the clubhouse. And especially if you go back to like May when you watch the games, and then you go to September, totally different atmosphere. So that's probably my biggest thought on why that won't happen again is Bob Melvin, is the new coaching. And I think you're going to have a lot of people bought into that. So I think that's probably the biggest difference. And, talking about being excited, like I'm excited for this baseball season, excited to see some of these guys. Hopefully we see CJ Abrams. Hopefully we see Trent Grisham play well. Like a lot of guys that struggled last year that could bounce back. Blake Snell at the end of last season when he was pitching before he went down with injury, he looked great. Like that's a guy that I want to see just go out there and just be completely dialed in. So hopefully, that's where this is at. Thank you for this, Devin. Appreciate it. And first question. How do you guys feel that the Angels were one of the 4 teams that rejected the luxury tax increase? I thought this was kind of weird because the Angels have paid so many players. Maybe the reasoning is, and I was thinking about this. I don't know how you feel, because one of my friends is Angels fans. Like, yeah, our owner's super cheap or whatever. I thought it was more of like his thought was, I don't mind paying the luxury tax, but it gives me like a benefit that I'll go deep into the luxury tax where other teams won't. That was my thought on it, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
I was kind of on board with you. I think it's kind of crazy that you pay what 300 mil plus for Anthony Rendon. You pay for like a $400 million contract to Mike Trout. If you want to keep Shohei Ohtani, which it looks like they do, they're gonna have to pay around, at this rate, if he keeps going like this, 400 plus, maybe even more than Trout. So it's just kind of crazy to see that they were one of the teams that rejected the luxury tax increase, especially when you consider like they've been trying to win for forever, it feels like, and they don't want the the chance to be able to go spend more money without facing consequences. Yeah, exactly. They're spending it stupidly, and it's kind of crazy they don't want to spend even more stupidly. But I don't know. I just thought, especially with all of their holes in the pitching department, because I can't think of a single pitcher on that squad except for Raisel Iglesias. That's legit. Um, I thought they'd want to be able to spend more money, and it's kind of crazy to see that they rejected it because I think everybody had a consensus of who the teams would be, like the Pirates, the Rays, teams like that aren't willing to spend money, historically haven't been willing to spend money. So it's kind of crazy to see that a team that has recently spent a lot of money didn't want it.
One thing to note on that though is apparently the Angels their salary last year or their payroll was only 180 million, and this year it's only 161. So I guess it's not that high. So I guess what the Angels have been doing, just looking at this, is they have a bunch of guys making a ton of money, and then all of their other complementary players make nothing. So maybe it is you're trying to avoid that luxury tax. But that was just my initial thought when I saw that he rejected it. Was like, well, they just broke all these guys off. Is that like to get a competitive advantage? But when you look at the numbers, it looks like that's probably not the case actually. So kind of weird though, just a weird situation because when you look at the Angels, you're like, oh yeah, they're a team that spends their money in a dumb way that doesn't help their team win. And I still think that stands, but I don't know, a little bit odd. I see some comments about the 14 team playoff, opposed to having 12 or 14, and also like that's one of the big thing that's tying up this agreement, which I think is kind of a dumb thing to have tie it up. I don't know how you feel about that, but what do you think about potentially there being a 14 team playoff format?
14 teams is too much. At that point, you're letting almost half of the league in. That's way too much, in my opinion. I think 12 is good. I was even in favor of keeping it at 5, but I know, that's not on the table. I just like 5 because, first off, I'd like to eliminate the wild card game just because a lot of people complain about it. Personally, I think the wild card game is kind of cool unless the Padres are in it. Then I don't want no part of it. But if you were able to eliminate that wild card game and instead you go a series of 2 against the 5 and the 3 against the 4, I don't know why that's not been considered. But now what you can do is you can just go with I forgot how they wanted to do it in terms of the 12 team playoff, but I think 12 is good. I think 12 would be fun. It just adds another team. It's another chance for our team, who historically never makes the playoffs, to another chance to get in. And that's why I'm so in favor of it. Whereas, like, I wouldn't be surprised if fans of the Dodgers and the Yankees, big time teams that consistently make the playoffs, aren't in favor of it. Because they're always making the playoffs, so it really doesn't matter to them. But for us, any opportunity to be able to get into the postseason, watch postseason baseball, have our team have a chance at the World Series is always going to be fun. Now, I don't understand. What I had seen is the owners had already told ESPN, or I forgot what big time channel, that they would have 14 team playoffs. That was one of the main holdups that I heard, or that I was reading. So they kind of did that prematurely. It's kind of weird, but right now it looks as if the players might give in to the 14 team playoff, especially because the owners had already given their promise to, a big time sports channel. 14 teams, I think, is too much, but also you got to remember there might be some expansion teams in the future.
I think it's kind of a hard situation because on one end, I think that you add more teams to the playoffs, you add a 14 team playoff, the format that's been talked about where the 1 seed gets a bye, then the other 6 or the other 2 division winners pick their wild card opponents, and there's 4 wild card teams then. 4 wild card teams. I was thinking about that for a second. But if you have 14 of 30 teams making the playoffs and you have a 162 game regular season, doesn't that make your regular season pretty much like irrelevant? That's what's happening to basketball. I'll tell you guys right now, I do not watch regular season basketball. I watch like 5 games. I'll watch all the playoff games and I'll get excited for the playoff games. But there's like not really a reason to watch basketball. Now, basketball is a little bit different. One, like star players just kind of rest throughout the season. And now like 10 teams basically make the playoffs with the play-in, which is crazy. But I don't know, dude. I feel like because right now you have 10, but it's not really 10 because the wild card teams play a 1-game series, which I honestly don't even understand why it's a 1-game series. I still think that at the very least that should be a 3-game series. If you add in another team, you have 6 teams. That makes a little bit more sense. You have 1-6, 2-5, 3-4, right? That makes a lot more sense. If you add another team, it's just like you just keep adding teams. You keep adding different teams that like aren't very good or they have their season derailed and they're able to make it. So there are like a lot of pros and cons. I think that it would ultimately though affect the regular season a lot because I don't think you'd see teams really like have their players playing all the time. You'd see teams rest their guys. If you're the Padres and you're looking like you're going to be pretty much locked into a wild card spot with like 60 games left, you're going to start seeing Tatis rested a lot. And it makes perfect. Like I hope you see Tatis rested a lot. Like that makes perfect sense, unless he's go, like vying for an MVP. But like you're gonna see that with teams across the board. If a team wins the division and they're not gonna have that first team bye, they're basically going to rest their players from there on out. So for a lot of teams in September, there's gonna be a heavy playoff push. But for other teams, they're not even gonna be playing their guys. And going to those games is not gonna matter if none of the starters are in because they're gonna rest for 2 weeks. So it just makes it tough. I mean, you look last year, Max Muncy got hurt right at the end of the year. That's huge for the Dodgers, right? Like, so teams are going to rest their guys. So I don't know. I think it hurts like the regular season a lot. The playoffs would be sick though. I mean, the playoff format that was discussed would be awesome, but I just don't know for a 162 game regular season, it hurts it a lot. But yeah, players had it here. I'll put this one on. Players had a point. 14 teams basically means almost half the league makes the playoffs. You have the owners that don't spend money that can backdoor into the playoffs and give the excuse not to spend. That's exactly the problem. So I think what the 14-team playoff is going to do is kind of force a lot of different things in the agreements where it's like, okay, if we're gonna have a 14-team playoff, then we need to have, a cap floor, right? Like we need to do different things like this. We need to increase the luxury tax. We need to do X, Y, and Z so this doesn't happen. So I like this from Arthur. Yeah, I don't know. Do you think it would have like affected in that way for regular season and also like the owner's ability to spend?
Yeah, of course, definitely. If there's gonna be 14, half the league's gonna be able to make the playoffs. Why would the A's, the Rays, the Pirates, the Indians, why would they want to spend if they're gonna be able to just develop guys the way they have and get into the playoffs anyway? It's gonna be like, oh well, why do I have to spend more money? I've been making playoffs, so why do I gotta spend more money? I think you brought that up. That's basically exactly what it's going to happen. So I feel like even if the luxury tax is increased, it's not like it's going to matter. I don't think they're going to want to reach that point. But I think, like I said, it's always cool to be able to watch everybody's team make the playoffs. It's really good for baseball in general. I think it's fun. I think it's fun to have a lot of teams in the playoffs, 3-game series. That way your team's not asked out in a 1-game series. But at the same time, just if half the leagues make the playoffs, it takes the reward of making the playoffs away. Like for us Padre fans, it's like, oh, sick, our team made the playoffs. And if it's a 14-team playoff, it's like, who cares? Did you get to the championship series? No. Then if you didn't, then it's not really an accomplishment to just make the playoffs because half the leagues make the playoffs. Seven teams in each division. And think about it, there's only like 5 or 6 teams that are actually competitive in each league. Like for us, it's the Padres, Dodgers, Giants, Mets are trying to be competitive. Braves, that's 5. Who else? I can't really think any off the top of my head. Cardinals are always competitive. Yeah, so like 6 or 7 teams are already trying to be competitive anyway. And that's it. I think even in a 14-team playoff, I don't know if the Padres make it last year.
I don't think they would have. I think maybe they were 7th or 8th, something like that. They're super close. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. And also like right here, I think anyone can win it. Playoffs are going to be super fun to watch with the DH. I think it will make the playoffs a lot better, but I just worry on how it affects like how the season goes. That's what I'd be concerned about, because already like then will be seasons so long, and if you're gonna be like, oh yeah, we're gonna do it like this, but then half the teams make the playoffs, you're like, well, what's the point? And that's just what I would ultimately be afraid of. But I don't know. Don't know how I'm feeling about that. I see people also talking about the San Diego getting an NBA team. You think it ever happens? Think Clippers last ditch effort there?
The Clippers are better off in LA. Like, I hate to say
Well, they're
it.
staying in LA. They're staying in LA though.
They're staying in LA. They're just. I don't think anything's going to want to come to San Diego. I went past. I think I was like 10 or 11 years old. I hadn't even known San Diego had a basketball team, and I saw the arena, and I was like, "What's that for?" And my dad was telling me about how San Diego had an NBA team, and I heard it was the Clippers. But no, I don't think an NBA team would come. I think the NFL is going to come back to San Diego in like 10 to 15 years, but I don't think the NBA is going to come back to San Diego. I think, LA is too big of a, because if any team's going to come back to San Diego, it'd be the Clippers, but they're going to stay over there. It's too big, especially in the NBA. That is a huge market. LA and New York get all the publicity, and the Knicks suck. So I don't know why they get so much publicity. The Lakers suck. I don't know why. Well, LeBron, but the Clippers are going to get a lot of publicity because of Kawhi and PG, but I don't even think they're playing right now, and they're still winning. I think they're still the 8th seed, so they'll be all right. And when they come back, they're going to get a lot of publicity too. So I don't know. In San Diego, you're not going to see the same thing.
Yeah, I feel it there. Also, JDS third. Padres always competitive since winter 2020. I think Isaac, you're talking more about like putting money into the team right now, as in being competitive financially, where a lot of teams are just like, oh yeah, we're not trying to win. Clearly, we don't pay any of our players. We let everyone walk in free agency. That's what I took it as you were more saying, because especially with the agreement, that's why like the players are scared about the long playoff, correct?
Well, I'll have to go back and watch the film, but I said that there's certain teams that are always competitive, such as the Dodgers and the Yankees and the big time teams that are always competitive. I said that there's only a couple teams right now that are trying to be competitive in each league, one of them being the Padres.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, you can, and it's like the same boat as the Mets. The Mets have not been very competitive for the last 40 years, but
Exactly.
clearly now they're trying to put in money to win.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing, San Diego Jaguars. You guys ready?
I would never be if that happened, I would still not be a Jaguars. I would hate my life if I was a Jaguar. At least, like, yeah, the Chargers, they lose, but at least it's exciting to watch them lose, if you know what I mean. Like, I get excited.
You don't got faith in T-Law?
Never. I don't at all. I really don't. I thought he was overhyped coming into the league.
I think he's okay. I'll say this, and this is definitely not baseball, but I think he's really good. The thing is, I just don't know how confident I am in their management.
Yeah, the Jags are going to screw him.
Trent Baalke is horrible, awful. I do not know how he got another GM job. And if you guys are not familiar, he was the GM of the 49ers. He inherited one of the best rosters in the league, and in about 5 seasons, he took them to the very worst roster in the league. Like, everyone retired, didn't replace anyone. What did we think of Urban Meyer? Didn't think Urban Meyer was a very good hire. Thought that was not good idea there. I mean, I don't know, dude. Urban Meyer, I like Doug Peterson a lot more than Urban Meyer, that's for sure. And I'm not even necessarily a big Doug Peterson guy. Like, I'm pretty skeptical with it. But a lot of people that I've talked to that like Doug Peterson are like, look, like, this is a massive upgrade. And I definitely agree it's an upgrade. But I mean, if you're the Jags, like, who are you going to get? Like, top tier coaches don't want to go to Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence is the only like reason why people want to go there.
I do think Peterson's a massive upgrade over Urban Meyer, especially, dude. Coming into the season, there were rumors that the Chargers were going to get Urban Meyer, and I was so scared. I was, especially because I think he sucks. Like, I can't think of a college coach that's game is or coaching strategies or whatever have transferred good to the NFL. Like, they're good college coaches for a reason. There's a reason they don't come to the NFL. I think, what's his name? He went back to USC. He had when he would call plays, he would use the cards that have symbols on them. Chip Kelly, he had one good season.
Oh, Chip. Well, Chip was only good because Chip would run this thing where he would run subs onto the field, and
Yeah.
he would beat the defense. The defense would always be delayed, and then they had to change the rules. And then Chip was not good after that.
Yeah, it was bad. So I don't have any faith in the Jaguars either. When have they shown us, other than the season they made the playoffs, when have they shown us why we should have faith? Like, there's been no reason. They made the playoffs one year with Blake Bortles, and they had a really good defense, and they went to the AFC Championship. Other than that, dude, they're going to lose DJ Chark, it looks like. So that's one of his weapons.
Really? They're actually going to lose him?
I think they're going to lose DJ Chark, yeah.
Oh, I hope not, dude. I like DJ. I mean, I don't. He's solid. Like, I think he'd be a good fit with Trevor Lawrence because they don't really have much there besides.
Yeah, exactly. You're taking away one of his. I think that's his best weapon.
Yeah.
So you're taking him away. So what do they have after that? Marvin Jones, James Robinson, just a whole bunch of nothing.
They got Travis, but he's coming off a knee tear.
Yeah.
It's scary when you have a running back with a knee tear, that's for sure. I think for Jags, this is pretty accurate. Need a new GM, need to build an offensive line to protect Lawrence.
Do they have the first pick?
Second, I want to say. I think maybe they do have the first pick. I'm tripping right now. I honestly haven't been locked into draft order.
I'm pretty sure I think they do. I'm pretty sure they'll take Evan Neal.
See, that'd be I don't know. I mean, that makes the most sense, right? Like you are trying to build the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got another Padres one here.
Okay.
Wonder if any of the Padres are going to hit over 300 this year. It would be nice with all the sticky stuff banned, and we should be entering a hitters era. Hopefully, that is a good point. And pitchers are definitely going to make adjustments and improvements on after like the midseason last year. But I think that there's a couple guys that could be candidates. I think probably Cronenworth and Nola are the two guys that come to mind. I know that sounds high for Nola, but he could, right? There's just not many like pure contact hitters on this team.
I don't know if Nola can, just because catching is so brutal. Like having to hit, I remember thinking, it can't be that hard. And then I started catching some, and oh my God, it was a lot harder than I thought, because like you're squatting all game, you're in a position that hurts your knees all game, and you got to do it for a while, and then you have to go hit. You're expected to go hit good. Like there's no way. That's why defense is so important for a catcher, because you don't really have to be that good at hitting if you're a catcher, as long as you play amazing defense. But with that being said, who can hit 300? I think the most likely would be Jake. I think you already said it. I think the most likely would be Jake.
Abrams?
Yeah.
Maybe not next year.
Yeah, I probably got to see him first, just to get a feel of how good he actually is. But yeah, it definitely would be Jake, just because he's a really solid contact hitter. He rarely strikes out. He has such a good plate approach. He's able to take the ball gap to gap. He's able to go with the pitch. Like everything about his plate approach is perfect. And I think in this era, it's going to be a lot harder to see guys hit over 300, because right now it's home run or strikeout for a lot of these guys. Unfortunately, it looks like, but there are still some contact hitters out there, and I think with Jake's plate approach, he could definitely beat one of those guys.
So I was looking at what Tatis has hit over the last couple of years. I think Tatis is probably actually the leader of that. I know that his game isn't necessarily like trying to hit 300, but if he cuts down some of the swing and miss on his game, like that could push his average up 15, 20 points.
Before he got hurt in 2019, wasn't he batting like three? What was he
Both
batting?
Times.
319, right?
Yeah. And then in 2020, he got banged up and he slumped at the end of the year, if you remember, because he was like one of the top 3 guys for MVP, and he had like a rough last month. And then last season, if you take like the 2 weeks after each time he went down and he came back, because he would struggle like a lot. He'd come back. It happened. I think it was the same thing that happened like 3 times during the year. He hit a home run in the first game back, and then he slumped for 2 weeks every time. And like bad slumps too, like really, really bad slumps, because he hadn't been hitting. So I think that's something where maybe like if you take that away, now it's another health thing. That's a massive question mark for him. But I think that he's probably the most likely, because Machado's never going to hit 300. He's going to hit 260 to 280 usually.
I hope that goes on Bad Padres. I want it to go on Bad Padres takes because
What?
I think so too. I'm with you. Like, I don't think he'll ever hit 300. Like,
Let's look at his numbers. Let's look at his career numbers. I want to see. And that's not a knock. That's just not his game at all. Like he's a third baseman. He hit in 2018. Nope, because he only played half the year on the Orioles. So he's pretty consistently 280s,
like
270s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he could hit 300, but it's unlikely just based on his career average. I think that I would probably go. Honestly, I might go Machado 3 then. I might go Tatis, Cronenworth, then Machado. But Cronenworth's game is just more built to see him hit 300, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. He's just, like I said, his play and approach, his ability to take the pitch, whatever it's pitched to him, and his just everything about his approach at the plate is so good.
Yeah. Got a couple of things. Suzuki. If Suzuki came over and hit 300, dude, we would be going crazy because that would be such a massive just to have that adjustment and then immediately hit 300. I think that Suzuki, if they sign Suzuki, I think his first year you're going to see him struggle at the plate. I think it's inevitable. I still think it's worth it to go sign him because he's so good defensively, and you would have 2 elite defenders in the outfield. And then I know Will Myers gets a lot of slack for his outfield play, but at least he's better in left field, and at least he can cover a good amount of ground. As like there's some outfielders where it's like, oh yeah, like they're just bad, like they're just really, really bad, and that's like the guys that we've been talking about too. Of the options to go sign a corner outfielder outside of Suzuki, it's like, oh yeah, that guy's a horrible fielder for pretty much every single guy that you can list. So, and then Rule 5 draft, Adam asked, are they canceling the Rule 5 draft? Gil responded, it'll take place shortly after they reach a deal. That's what I've thought too. I'm not 100% sure on that. And then let's see, we got another question. We're probably gonna take off kind of soon, probably, but go over a couple more questions here. Does AJ survive another losing or a subpar season? Isaac, you can lead this one off. I think this is a good question.
I don't think so. But it looks like he's going to. So the reason I don't think so is just because he had so many opportunities. Well, I wouldn't say so many opportunities, but 2015, he built a team that was supposed to make the playoffs. It didn't happen. And they ended up being pretty bad for a lot of years. 2019, we see the team start to, generate some popularity. We see the young talent start to take off. We see Fernando hold his own as a rookie. And I want to say he was the leader for the rookie of the year. And he was batting like 319 before he ended up being shut down for the season. I think. So don't quote me on that. But he was so good. And at the All-Star break, I don't know if you remember, the Padres were only like 2 or 3 games back of the wild card spot in 2019. They were looking really good. And that was with Eric Lauer, Joey Lucchesi, Nick Margevicius as your 1, 2, 3, Chris Paddock as your 4. Like, that's pretty abysmal. So I was very inspired in 2019 to see that, especially with, we didn't have the best talent. Manny Machado wasn't his best self, and we were still up there with, with a chance to compete for that wild card spot. Unfortunately, after the All-Star break, it didn't pan out, but it was inspiring nonetheless. 2020, you saw, man, the Padres were the second best team in baseball, and of course, it's a short season, but it's still inspiring nonetheless. So when you see 2021, you see the start of 2021, you think the Padres are a shoo-in for the playoffs because at one point they had the best record. At another point, they were multiple games on games on games up on the wildcard spot, the last wildcard spot, to where they would have had to play the Dodgers. So when you see that lead start to dwindle to 5 in August, you still feel secure, but not secure enough. And when you see it dwindle to 1 going into the Cardinal series or tied, and you lose all 3, it's not exciting. With that being said about AJ, I think he's done enough to where, he tried to build championship contending teams. Unfortunately, it's a business, so I don't think trying is enough. Let's see how he does this year, though. If he does good this year, all I'm expecting is a playoff appearance. Let's make it to the NLDS. I'm cool with the NLDS appearance. I don't need the World Series yet. But remember, this was the year that the Padres were supposed to go to the World Series. This was the World Series expectancy. So realistically, we should have been winning for a couple years now.
I think last year was the really big disappointment, right? Like that was the year was like, because 2019, like you saw them start out kind of hot, and then Tatis got hurt, and they were still like pretty far away. I felt like, but it was like okay, like a lot of the pieces are set here. 2020, you saw a team that looked really good, but it's a short season, so it's tough. Then 2021, they start out hot again, and then they struggle, and then it's like, oh, is the 2020 season a joke then? Because that's the question that's asked. I don't think he does, though. I think if they are under 500 this year, I think that AJ Preller will be fired. I also don't think they're going to be under 500. So there's that aspect of it too. I think they're going to make the playoffs, and I think that will kind of go out the window. But it's going to be hard to make the case to keep him if they're under 500, because that means a lot of the guys that he's brought over are not performing. So like you have to kind of look at it as all that stuff. But I mean, you bring in Bob Melvin, like there's a huge effort this offseason already in the coaching department to improve that. So I don't know. I think that it's a lot better. I also see a lot of conversation of, hitting for average, being more important than power for the Padres. Also talking about, Ted Williams said that he would take a 300 hitter over a slugger in a clutch situation. I think there's a lot to take out of this. First thing, I want to go over the team rankings last year. The Padres in slugging were 21st in the MLB, and in home runs were 23rd. In batting average, they were 15th. You want to be higher in all three categories. However, their like lack of power, I think, is the biggest thing they need to address. I think that is more important than any other aspect that they can address. At the same time, they definitely do need another table setter. I think that guy is going to be CJ Abrams. Now, the big question is that going to be next year or is it going to be the year after? And also, you haven't seen this guy play at the MLB level, so there's always going to be risk there. I just don't think that, and also and then going back, one other thing on that comment, the Ted Williams comment. You'd rather have a 300 hitter than a slugger necessarily. I think the big thing that's different about that is the two guys that are the clutchest player on the Padres are Fernando and Manny. And the difference is when there's a guy on second base, they're not necessarily trying to go out there and hit a home run. They choke up on the bat, and we see Manny just hit those bloopers into the gaps in the outfield all the time in those situations to bring in guys. So I think you have to kind of take it as like Manny's not having the approach of a slugger when there's a guy on second with 2 outs. That's not what he does. So I think it kind of goes like both ways. Like, yeah, like you can adjust your approach and then you can still be more of a contact hitter in those situations. So I don't know. I definitely get where like the Ted Williams quote that makes a lot of sense. But if you're just going out there swinging for the fences, that's a bad approach in that situation. So I think there's kind of like a couple pieces there. But how do you feel about that? What do you think the Padres offensively, what's more important for them to address, contact hitting or power hitting this offseason?
Oh, power. Definitely power. I'm looking at the team batting average rankings right now, and I'm thinking how many of these teams made the playoffs. Houston, number 1, batting .267 as a team, made the playoffs. Toronto didn't. Boston did. Washington didn't. Chicago did. Chicago did. Chicago made the playoffs. Colorado didn't. Cincinnati didn't. Kansas City didn't. The Giants did, and the Angels didn't. So that's only 1, 2, 3, 4 teams in the top 10 made the playoffs in batting average. 4 top 10 batting average teams made the playoffs, only 40% of them. Meanwhile, almost every team that made the playoffs was top 10 in OPS, slugging percentage, home runs, all of the power categories. I'm not saying contact hitting is not important. It's just that baseball has changed. The game changes. It's always going to evolve in different ways. Right now, there's a lot of power hitters. There's a lot of guys that, with one swing of the bat can change the game. Those are the kind of guys that you want in your lineup. A guy that can change the game in one swing. You're down 3, you haven't done crap all game. You barely had guys on base, but this guy walks, home run, tie game. Those are kind of, you want power in your lineup. I think that's what the Padres were missing last year, where, you go, oh, Fernando's batting leadoff, Jake's batting second, and Manny's batting third. Oh, cool. Now you don't have any power in the rest of your lineup. Because Will only hit 15? Hosmer hit 15 or less. Nola hit 2. Who else is there? Grisham probably hit 12 to 15.
He had a down year for power, I felt. I guess it's early on in his career, but I was expecting higher numbers from Grisham.
Mm-hmm. Pham didn't
Myers, Pham. Yeah, I was gonna say dude, basically everyone, even Manny's numbers were a little bit down because of shoulder injury. So it was and he was second on the team.
And the team that won the World Series Austin Riley hit 30 plus home runs. Dansby Swanson hit 27. Ozzy Albies hit 30. Freddie Freeman hit 30 plus. Their whole infield hit 30 plus. I mean, if a World Series team has nothing but guys that can slug, I think.
Hey, and that's not counting Jock.
That's not counting Jock. That's not counting Ronald Acuna.
You didn't have Acuna.
So, I mean, what I'm saying is that slugging is the winning recipe. I don't know about everyone else, but if that's what shows the winning recipe is, then you got to follow it.
Yeah.
You got to follow the book.
So then who do you think I'll ask this and I have one more question, then we'll probably take off out of here. But for the Padres, then for that kind of like leadoff spot for the guy to get on base, it's obviously Jake right now. Jake's the best contact hitter I feel like on this team. But after that, who would be someone that could step into a role like that as like a table setter?
That's already on the team?
Yeah. Or not on the team.
Trent Grisham.
Because he walks?
Yeah, because he walks pretty much. We just need a guy that's going to get on. I mean, at the top of the lineup, like I can agree. We just need guys that are going to get on base. Or even at the bottom with the DH because, I mean, after the first time in the order, it doesn't really matter where you bat. So what I'm saying by that is that, like, you could have guys that just get on base at the bottom of the lineup and have a power-loaded top of the lineup, and you're going to look good. Like, I think that's a winning recipe to get guys on base that are at the bottom and then get Tatis and, Machado, Jake, whatever other power hitters you're going to sign. Like, I think it's inevitable they're going to sign a power bat, whether it be, I hope it's not Nick Castellanos, but it could be Nick Castellanos, or it could be Nelson Cruz. It could be Kyle Schwarber. We don't know, but they're going to sign another power bat. But, with the table setter, it would probably be Trent Grisham or Will Myers. Will Myers is also another guy that, he could have a good season. I wouldn't bank on it. I think he's max going to be a 2-WAR player. I don't see him reaching 2020 status again, unless he can avoid injuries, but he's never been able to avoid injuries. And he's always, last year he was a strikeout bandit. Like, I don't know who led the team in strikeouts, but I would bet he's top 2. Oh, dude, if you haven't checked out our video on the top 5 corner outfitters that we'd like, go check it out. We talked about Kyle Schwarber kind of in depth, but I think we're both on board. Like, wherever you can get Kyle Schwarber, like wherever you can get Kyle Schwarber, you should go get Kyle Schwarber. Wherever you can put him, really. DH, first base, corner outfield, it doesn't really matter. We just need a guy that's going to hit some bombs and the one contact bat and one power bat, and I would be satisfied.
I think you also need like some improvement just overall with your in-house options. Iris says it right here, and this is 100% true. If you go and look at the offensive numbers, I want to say 4th best, but I say 4th best offensive player, and it's like he is. It's like I don't know if you look at least if like the way that I'm looking at the stats, I definitely feel like he is, and that's not a good sign. That's a bad sign because he didn't have a great year and he was your 4th best guy. That's the problem there. So yeah, you gotta. Yeah, this is also true. He always strikes out with front of the score. I feel like that so many rallies in there, or like a ground ball from Hosmer. Like, dude, Hosmer and Myers back to back with guys on is like so brutal sometimes. But yeah, okay. One last thing, and then we're gonna take off out of here. So people are talking about Suzuki potentially winning the Rookie of the Year, and one thing that someone commented was Ichiro won Rookie of the Year and MVP in his rookie season. So that's kind of like the comp that they're going through there. Do you think that Suzuki would be able to win the Rookie of the Year?
I don't know. I think I got to look at the rest of the candidates, but yeah, looking at it right now, I don't know who else would be able to take from him, especially if he plays the type of defense he played over there in, what I always ask, Japan, right? Yeah, so if he's able to play the same kind of defense he did in Japan, and I don't even think he's got to hit that good. I think if he hits like 250, I think he'd still win it with a couple of bombs. I just got to look at the rest of the guys that can win the Rookie of the Year. There's Adley Rutschman. There might be C.J. Abrams. Who knows? Maybe Mackenzie Gore might be up there on at one point. But there's a lot of guys even in damn it, sorry guys, in our organization that can win the Rookie of the Year. So I don't know. I got to look at the rest of the pool. I think if Abrams were to come up, I think he'd be the most likely candidate, just because um, he would immediately become one of the most electrifying players in baseball if he were to pan out the way that everyone thinks he will. And it would just be good marketing to get him the Rookie of the Year. We know how baseball works. It's not all about giving the right guy the right award. Well, technically, it is about giving the right guy the right award in terms of who's going to get us the most money, who's going to gain us the most popularity, who's going to expand the sport enough. And if it's CJ Abrams, even if he has a little worse stats, but he's all over, the TikTok and Twitter and all that kind of stuff, they're going to give it to him. Why? Because he's the most marketable player, young player. So I think it would be Abrams, who I would favor Abrams if he were to come up and start the season on the major league team. But we'll have to see where Suzuki goes, because I feel like that's going to be a big it's going to be big in seeing where he goes, and that's going to be big in his career. Like if he goes to San Diego, that might take him a lot longer than if he goes to like a team that's historically good at developing players.
Yeah.
I like Eddie Rosario one.
Yeah, that was another that we like to potentially bring in, and also a guy that can be a table setter too. I do kind of wonder though, for the one spot, I don't necessarily think that's the guy that I want hitting for the highest average. More of a solid on base guy and a guy that is a threat on the base path. That's why Trent Grisham ideally is that kind of guy. Now he needs to improve on his last year. But yeah, I think Jake in the 3-hole, because I saw some people talking about that before. I like Jake in the 3-hole the most. I don't like Fernando leading off that much, but with the DH, I do like it a little bit more. I think Fernando ideally is your 2-hitter, and I think Machado. I think 2, 3, 4 should be Fernando, Cronenworth, and then Machado. I think that's really solid, but it's trying to find out who's that consistent guy at 1 and who's the guy at 5, because they didn't have that last year. It was Pham. Pham was your 5-hitter, and Pham was atrocious at the 5-hole. He was good at the 1-hole, and then they didn't put him there. And okay, I don't even want to get into that. I get too frustrated about the Pham thing. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for today's episode, guys. Thank you all for listening. We'll be going over this stuff. We'll probably post another mailbag question either today or tomorrow. We got to think of a question there. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for today's episode. So have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you all soon.